Radio Retrofuture.
Welcome to Radio Retrofuture. I'm Bansert and today I'm here with David Grimsby. How are you, David?
Hello. I am very good. Thanks for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. And let's just get right into the conversation. So, who is David Grimsby and what does he do?
Well, much like you posted in your description, I am an indie game designer. I've designed games pretty much since I was a child. It was a favorite pastime, and once I got older and discovered some of the sites on the internet that allowed you to self-publish those without having to try to go through a big company, it kind of opened the doors for me to let my creativity run wild. I used to be a professional wrestler for about 8 years. That's kind of what helps bring about the idea of the show, kind of a melding of steampunk and professional wrestling.
Maybe know what your stage name was?
It was for a smaller company in Michigan known as the Michigan Wrestling Organization. I actually wrestled under the name Morgoth. It was a joke, a play on words that I am more goth than you are.
Okay. Was it,
yeah.
Should I also now imagine like one of those Kiss-like wrestlers?
Yeah, like the stereotypical black lipstick and the black eyeliner and wearing a lot of alternative clothing.
Did you enjoy doing it?
Oh yeah, that was a dream of mine when I was growing up. I always wanted to be a pro wrestler. You know, I grew up watching like Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior, and when I got older I went to school for it and was able to live out that childhood dream for about a decade. I actually got injured doing that, which is why I retired from it earlier this year, and I really like physical performance and acting, and that's kind of where I got the idea for the Clockwork Fisticuff Society show, because I still wanted to do that physical performance, but in a way that was maybe slightly safer, and boxing, you're not falling down as much. So combining, Victorian steampunk era with pro wrestling and mashing them up and seeing what happens is kind of where the idea came from.
Yeah, we'll talk later more about your show. I'm not a pro wrestling fan or anything. All I know is from, guys talking on podcasts about it from time to time. But maybe we can dispel one myth. What is one of the most misunderstood things about pro wrestling?
That it's fake and doesn't hurt. Okay. That is probably one of the most heard things. At least in my career, I've heard people say that it doesn't hurt, and it very much does hurt. I got a retirement causing injury doing it. The ring is not a pillow. It's very hard. There's a very thin layer of padding on top of wood and metal, so when you fall, you feel it.
We'll talk about more how the show fighting goes in the Fisticuff Society. But you also are a game designer. What kind of games? We're talking about board games, right? Not video games.
Right, card games, more the tangible tabletop games.
What is your favorite type of game? What is your favorite board game, for example?
I'm a very big fan of the Talisman board game. Okay. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
I know the title. I haven't had a chance to play it yet.
I like games that are different every time. You have the old standby games that most of the public's used to, like Monopolies and things like that. I like the games that when you play, maybe the board is modular, so it's different every time, or you see different cards, just so you're not playing the same thing over and over again. I really like those, and Talisman is a good example of that, because the stuff you encounter every game changes.
I really should pick up that game and play it because everyone tells me it's a wonderful game. Are there any particular companies, you are in the indie scene, is there one specific indie company you think deserves to be called out here on the show?
Embarrassingly, I'm not very familiar with a lot of the indie companies. I post my games on GameCrafter, and there are so many small companies on there, or just independent developers like myself, that a lot of people get lost, names get lost, and it's just such a huge pool of people. With the access of this programming that'll allow people to just print their games on demand and sell them at a smaller scale has opened up the doors for, I think, a lot of people like me that have wanted to maybe try their hand at making a game and haven't had the opportunity. But as for a specific indie company, I'm not that familiar with them.
Do you watch the gaming community, I suppose you could call it, or game crafting community. Is there a trend that steampunk is becoming more popular among the titles?
On the site, the Game Crafter site I use, there is I'd say maybe a dozen steampunk games on there, but the genre as a whole, I don't think is represented on that site in a great amount. It's a lot of sci-fi stuff, fantasy-based, medieval, Renaissance-y type games. Steampunk seems to be represented. I haven't tried a lot of steampunk games personally. I have the one that I created for the show, and I've tried a deck building game based around a academy where you're fighting monsters, and I wasn't a huge fan of that one.
Well, who knows? Maybe in the future we can come back to that subject, because I'm a big board game fan, and well, I'd like to know what's out there when it comes to that topic, but you know, it's difficult to make the time and find people willing to make the time to play such games. But, you know, let's talk about this Fisticuff's game you made. What is that like?
So I had the show idea, but having not have ever made a show, I went with what I knew best, which was game design. So I took the idea I had in my head for the show and tried to translate it into a card game. So the premise of it is you have the two fighters, and you get some colleagues and some equipment that are in your corner, and they help you cheat. And the basis of it is hand management. So you each have a hand of 10 cards that are punches, and you play them simultaneously. Whoever's is higher hits their opponent. What makes the game exciting is you don't know what cards you're going to get to help you every game. They're drawn randomly. So you might have a top hat in your corner and a biased referee, and your opponent might have a steel chair and an automaton stand-in.
Okay.
And those all do different things. So they basically change the rules for each of the players during any given game.
Okay. Well, it sounds interesting. Is there any particular well-known card game that looks similar or was an inspiration for the system?
I used to play, a long time ago, WWE actually had a card game called Raw Deal. And I use a similar mechanic in that. In that game, when you got hit with a move, you would flip cards over out of your deck into your discard pile, and stuff would happen. I also have a mechanic that's compared to Magic the Gathering's tapping. I refer to it as winding, like winding a gear. You turn the card 180 degrees instead of 90. Just over the years of playing, I've gotten inspiration from a handful of different game mechanics and kind of combined them together in my own rule set.
Oh, well, maybe some people are familiar with these old WWE wrestling games. Are these games you can recommend to people, or are they more for the real WWE fans?
I personally played it when I was younger and was and I still am a huge wrestling fan, but even more so then, if you're really into the strategy and game mechanics in general, I think the game is really good for people that are into collectible card games, because it was a collectible card game. Unfortunately, the company that made it decided to discontinue it probably like a decade ago. So the community has kept it alive by releasing their own sets that people could kind of print and play to keep it going. But it had a very deep card pool. Much like Magic, I think at this point it would be really hard to get into, especially when the main community is gone, since the game is not being supported anymore.
I got tired with Magic around Visions, I think, with all the power creep coming into that. So, wow, that's almost like 15 years ago. I'm old now.
I think they release a new set every 3 months.
Something like that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I remember back in those days when we played Magic or stuff like that, you know. It was like, wow, a new series is coming out in like 6 months, and you know, you were really, and when it came out, you would all run to the store and get those cards, and I think,
exactly.
It was around the period of when Visions was released, the follow-up to Mirage, that they started, you know, Ursa's Destiny and Ursa's this and Ursa's that, and all these series, and it was like madness, and the power creep was just. All the cards I had that used to, you know, be powerful were now, you know, average at best. It was ridiculous.
I personally stopped playing, I think, about 4 years ago. The group I played with, we kind of split apart as I relocated to a different location in Michigan, and I just kind of lost interest at that point.
Yeah, the community is very important with such games. Just no.
Yeah, you can't really play it.
Yeah. That too. Yeah, you can try and play with yourself, but I don't know how long you can keep that up. But enough about games for now. Let's talk about more about the Clockwork Fisticuff Society, because how did that project get started?
Well, as I mentioned, I wrestled for a while, and I still wanted to do that performance, and I didn't really have a way of having an outlet for that. So I started thinking, I'm a fan of the steampunk genre, and I like that physical performance, so let's mix them together and see what happens. And I was able to get together a cast of people that range from experienced actors to people that maybe have wanted to, but haven't had the opportunity. Mm-hmm. And we got together a small cast, and everybody did amazing, in my opinion. It was really well done. Well, for anyone that's watching locally where I am, I have one of the cast members. His name is Cody Leedy. He's actually a wrestler for the Michigan Wrestling Organization. He, in my opinion, is incredibly talented. That's why I wanted him on the show. He's very good at fight choreography, mm-hmm. and just playing an over-the-top character. He's very good at it. We have a guy who's actually playing the president of the society, who he's done local plays, live stage plays around here, and he's amazing at just being in character and being this like curmudgeonly man that doesn't like anybody.
I take it's more comedy than drama.
There's one season of the show is about 6 episodes. They're being released every other week when the show comes out. Each season comprises an entire tournament. So the premise of the show is that there's this boxing club that hosts these tournaments. The winner receives fame, fortune, and a fancy belt, that being the Clockwork Fisticuff Society Championship.
Right.
So every episode, the first episode will be the preliminary round of the tournament, and then going forward, every other episode will be the quarterfinals and semifinal and final round. So you get to see some matches, some backstage stuff where there's comedy, some scheming, things like that. Mm-hmm. So the show in that universe takes itself seriously, but the show, as you're watching it, is not taking itself very seriously, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I get the gist. I'm not familiar with pro wrestling, so I don't really know what to expect. So I guess this is a good gateway for me into pro wrestling. Do you think this is also a good gateway for people into steampunk?
Yeah, for both of those, the pro wrestling aspect, if someone's never seen a scripted combat sport, it could be a good gateway into it, because it's boxing, so you're seeing a lot of punching, and there are some illegal maneuvers that are used.
Of course.
But it's a very good, I think it could be a good jumping off point, because there's not like a roster of 30 guys and women that you have to try to figure out who they are. As for the steampunk aspect of it, I think it could be a good introduction. That's one of the things with the show, is that we pretty much have every steampunk cliche that exists. We have people, the whole goggle thing, and we have automatons and a mad scientist, and we have an airship pirate. So we kind of tick off all of those boxes for if someone who's not really familiar with steampunk, but maybe has heard about it a little bit, and those are the images that come to their head.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Those are all included in the show. So a very, very cliched and ridiculous character mix.
Okay. Well, you already said there are 6 episodes. Do you already have more seasons planned, or is this something like, well, we'll see how the first season goes, and then we'll take it from there?
The cast is completely on board for our second season. We were going to kind of gauge the public interest and mm-hmm. see what kind of feedback we get, but there are already ideas for a season 2 and season 3 story.
But what would you say were the main differences you had to account for when you were working on this?
Well, the thing that is nice about it is we have, pro wrestlers go through a lot of training to be able to fall down correctly, to make sure they don't get severely injured when their opponent slams them. Whereas with this, it's more stage combat that you might see at like a local theater or something like that. They're not, the people that are involved in it, they're not pro wrestlers. Some of them have never acted before, and that's why I wanted to give them a chance. But just with a little guidance, they were able to take very convincing falls and throw really convincing punches that look like they're really laying into the person that they're fighting, but it's completely safe and they're not actually hitting them at all. It's all acting. So, but I think that would be the main difference, and it would actually make it easier. I think pro wrestling, you need specific equipment. You have to have a very professionally built ring for wrestler safety.
Right.
Because we're doing just stage acting, we were able to have an old-timey Victorian ring. So it's wood posts with ropes, and be able to have a very convincing but not rigorous set that had to be built. So after all my years of setting up and tearing down wrestling arenas and sets and rings, it was a lot lighter workload, I guess.
And what were the biggest challenges you had to face during production?
Probably my inexperience of ever producing a show. Thankfully, I had someone. We have a guy in the show named Chris Robinson who plays the ring announcer. He has a degree in film, so he was able to give a lot of input on camera placement and maybe redoing some takes that didn't sound or look as good. And for me, who doesn't have that experience, I would maybe overlook it and think it was good enough. But I had people around me that were like, no, maybe we should do a couple more takes of it, and it just made the show that much better. So yeah, I think my inexperience was probably the biggest hurdle, but you learn really quick. The show filming went incredibly smoothly once we got everything set up and rolling along. We actually were able to shoot the entire season in one day.
Wow, how long do the episodes take?
The initial episode has a runtime of about 21 minutes. We're hoping to keep the other ones around 15. I was hoping, in it being in a YouTube setting, that we would have them maybe more bite-sized instead of like an hour and a half, 2 hour long program. Right. That people could watch a few matches, watch like a 15-minute show, and leave it at that. But if you were to discover the show after we release all the episodes, it would take you about the time it would take to watch an average length movie to watch the entire tournament from start to end.
And how many matches are there in total?
I believe there are 13 spread out over the 6 episodes. Yeah. There's 4 in the preliminary, and there's 2 in the other 5 episodes leading up to the finale.
Right. And how did you finance the endeavor? Is it self-funded?
It was self-funded. I budgeted out all of the materials I needed to build, like the walls, the ring, getting all the backstage decorations, I guess. A lot of the cast members were able to, they would buy their own stuff, or they had a lot of the stuff. I like the steampunk genre and style, so I was actually able to use a lot of my own clothing for costume pieces. It was self-funded. The budget for it was actually pretty low to be able to have all of the stuff we wanted, so a crowdfunding I think would have been a bit overkill for it.
Right. Okay. And how did you get any support from the steampunk community or local steampunks? Or is this really like we're just doing it, on our own strength kind of thing?
It was basically just doing it on our own. You honestly are the first one that wanted to have a conversation about it, and I've had a few other people asking to maybe put links up or banner description on their website. But but that's what I'm thankful for you, because you were the one that kind of got the ball rolling on that. Our following is growing slowly but surely. Every day I get a few extra people that are either liking the Facebook or being a follower on Twitter.
And, are you considering doing live shows on conventions?
That is definitely something I'm very interested in doing. Coming from the pro wrestling aspect, they were all live shows. So being in front of that crowd has a whole different energy that is really nice to experience. That's something we would definitely consider should we get a big enough following from maybe the first or second season.
Okay, well, it would be nice to see how that turns out. Do you have like a final plan, like, if money, budget stuff was not an issue, is there something like you really would like to do, be it live or in front of the camera? Have you fantasized about such things? I
would actually love to have maybe some cameo appearances, whether it be for a match or just cornering one of the fighters from someone well known in the steampunk community, like a musician, maybe like a Mr. B or Professor Elemental.
So, is there going to be a DVD release somewhere along the line, or is that something like we'll see how season 1 does? And
we've talked about having DVDs, maybe initially just for a cast gift, but we're not ruling out having that being released for public purchase. We've mainly been talking about having T-shirts or something along those lines made for the show and the characters. I am releasing an expansion for my game that is based off of the first season, so all of the cast will be in the game as characters and adding some of the shenanigans, as I call them, to the game.
Right. Well, it could be a nice combination of bringing out the DVD with the game for like a pre-order or something for extra promotion. But is there some kind of end game for you, or is it just like, well, we're just going to do the first season because it's fun, we're going to put it on YouTube and we'll just see if people like it, and if people like it, we do another season? Or
that's kind of where we're at right now. I just wanted to make the show and see if I could do it, and it went so well for us filming it that before we were even done filming the first day, everyone on the cast was already on board for a second season. So we left the first season on a cliffhanger, but it's that's why I wanted it as a tournament structure. If there's not enough interest for us to not do a second season, then the tournament started and ended, a champion was crowned, the end. But if there is enough interest, then we can continue. The next season would be a follow-up tournament where the champion would have to defend their title again.
Okay. What was what is the most important learning experience? Like, you learned what it is like to be a producer, but is there anything else you learned in this process, or is it like, well, I actually done this all before?
The direction, doing the directing aspect of it was enlightening. I was used to being on the other end, where you have a promoter of a company who will tell you, like, okay, this is when you're wrestling, go out and do this. And I did that. I'm a few characters in the show, but I was also having to check cameras and make sure that the story was being told correctly. Thankfully, everyone on the cast had a hand in quality control, making sure sound was good and that the cameras were correctly.
Yeah, but what we haven't talked about yet is how did you get acquainted with steampunk?
When I was about 18 or 19, I got into the whole goth scene, really got into like the clothing style and the music. And I remember one day I was just online and I saw an article written by someone who was also in the goth community, and they listed, it was just this fun little article that had all of the subcultures that they listed under the umbrella of goth. And there's like cyber goth and Victorian goth, and then I saw something I never heard of. And in this author's opinion, they listed steampunk under that as an alternative.
Yeah, I think I've seen that drawing as well. I've got it in a video, actually. I don't know if you've seen my last video, but
I have not seen it, but yeah, it might be the same one I'm talking about. I'd never seen that before, and it really was intriguing to me because it took this very classy-looking style and melded it with something that was different, and I liked different. So I looked into that, and I ended up discovering, bands and stuff that played considered that type of music, but I didn't really get much into it until I got older. So as I grew up, I kind of was phasing out of that really extreme goth style, and I wanted something that was still different, but maybe more classy and grown up, and that's when I kind of transitioned into Victorian, steampunkish culture more.
As somebody mentioned something about it was really hot during the filming.
Yes, we actually filmed this on a location that is a mixed martial arts gym.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we were friends with the owners, and me, again with my inexperience, forgot to ask for the key to turn down the air conditioning, or to turn it up rather.
Right.
So it was nice. It was nice and hot in there for most of the day.
All the things that can go wrong during such a process is remarkable.
Yeah, considering all of the, we had, I think 8 cast members having to build all of the set the night before and the day of, and film everything in 3 different sets. The fact that everything that I will take being hot, if that's the biggest hiccup that we had that day, considering all the stuff that could have went wrong. We didn't have any equipment issues. Filming went great. All of the videos got saved. So all the little worries, like I was worried I was going to get home and I would check my computer and the files were all corrupted for whatever reason. But no, everything that was the biggest problem, I think, for everyone, is that it was a little warm, but we made do. Most people's costumes had layers. You had a lot of vests and hats. Our mad scientist gentleman was wearing dress pants, I believe a dress shirt, a coat, and an apron. One of my characters wears a full-length wool coat, like coachman jacket with a big shoulder apron thing. So that was kind of miserable, but...
I think I've seen a picture of that. What kind of character do you play in the series?
I actually play 3 different fighters in it, out of necessity. My main character is Kensington Apricot. He's a foppish Victorian man. He has the powdered wig and the makeup, and he has a fan.
I've seen a picture of that character.
Yeah, his whole backstory is that he's owns a failing clothing store, and that's why he's in the tournament to try to win some money, but he's an awful fighter. I play the automaton Pummeljaw in the show, and the guy that you saw with the big jacket, I also play. He's our time traveler.
So he already knows he's going to lose, right? Or
you would think that their backstory is he's from a group called the Chronological Order that can time travel by drinking.
Okay, that's the kind of time travel I can get behind.
And much like time traveling by drinking, it makes him almost blackout drunk. So while he can time travel, he's not very much use afterwards.
I love that idea. I really do. People, just for that, watch this series. I want to see how that works, because that's awesome.
Yeah, I was playing multiple characters through necessity. We had a cast member who was unfortunately unable to make the filming 11 days before filming, so I kind of scrambled and did an emergency character instead of trying to wrangle someone else into being in the show. And since these characters are their faces are partially covered, in the robot's case, it's fully covered. All of his skin's covered. I was able to play them very differently, so you can't tell it's the same person.
When will the first episodes air on YouTube?
We were looking to do a release in September, but post-production editing is going so well at this point that I think we're doing a cast premiere the 27th of this month, and then the show should probably be out a day or 2 after that publicly. So it'll be the 29th of August is what I'm shooting for. Okay.
Keep me posted and, make an announcement on the program. When it does come out. Yeah, sure, no problem. Well, we're running a little bit short, but all considering, I think we talked about enough. So is there any final message you have for our audience?
I guess I would just say, if you are interested in pro wrestling or steampunk genre, want to see a different take on it, my take on steampunk, and check out a show that, as far as I can tell, doesn't exist on YouTube currently. Just check out the Clockwork Fisticuff Society. It'll be coming out August 29th on our YouTube channel.
Well, with that announcement, I think we will be signing off for tonight. Well, people, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Radio Retrofuture. Make it your way, and I hope to see you all next week with a new episode on Radio Retrofuture, and it is going to be a very interesting guest. So I hope to see you all here next week. Goodbye.